Hi, my name's Stuart Lynch, and in this two-part video series, I'm going to show you how you can add an in-app purchase subscription to your SwiftUI app using Glassfy, a brilliant third-party SDK. In the first part, we'll focus on the AppStore Connect app setup and the Glassfy setup so that your app can communicate with the App Store through Glassfy's simple process. By the end of these videos, you'll understand why I will never use native StoreKit SDK directly in my apps again, because there is a simpler, better solution. In the second video, there's a link in the description, we'll build a paywall for our app so that your users can make that purchase to unlock the full features of your app. I love getting your feedback, so tap the thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video and leave a comment below. Make sure you subscribe to the video and ring that bell to get notifications of new videos. And if you want to support my work, you can buy me a coffee. At some time in your journey as an iOS developer, whether you work for a company or you're an independent developer creating your own apps, you'll likely have to deal with AppStore Connect and in-app purchases. Apple has made it somewhat easier with StoreKit too, but it's still not easy. That is, unless you use a third-party solution to help you out. Probably the most common one is RevenueCat, but in this video I want to introduce you to the new kid on the block, and that's Glassfy. A new way to build, manage, and grow in-app purchases, and in particular, in-app subscriptions. As their website says, you deserve to focus on your app and stop wasting your time on infrastructure. Glassfy will save you a ton of dev time, as this chart will show. Glassfy is an open source SDK with simple and transparent documentation. It is cross-platform and so useful if you develop outside the Apple bubble too. The analytics are great, and you own your data. The documentation is top-notch, but I'm going to step you through a complete implementation in this video. There are resources for a large number of SDKs, but we'll be focusing on the iOS SDK. And the pricing is too good to be true. It's free to try out, and you don't start paying until your revenue starts to exceed $10,000. I should be so lucky. So what are we going to do? This video is not intended to be an all-inclusive, but rather an introduction on how easy it is to incorporate Glassfy into a SwiftUI project. We'll begin with the starter project that we want to monetize by adding an in-app subscription, and we'll follow the freemium model. By this I mean that the app will provide limited content until the subscription is purchased, which will unlock the entire content so long as that subscription is active. And I highly recommend that you follow along with me yourself so that you can have a working model with a reusable code and an App Store and Glassfy reference that you can use for all of your future products. You can download that starter project from the link in the description. The sample app has been designed specifically for this tutorial, and as such should not be considered a viable product, but there may be some code in the application that you may find useful to use in your projects. The app and assets reflect the Glassfy product rather than the actual application, because if you keep your apps in a simulator, you may wish to have their purpose immediately recognizable, so I'm using the Glassfy logo and their colors for this project. The starter project is fully functional, and it allows you to choose from one of several emoji categories, and once selected, choose one of the emojis that's in that category. That's it. Pretty simple. All you do is select a category, and either manually browse, or search to locate an item that you want, and select it. The Emoji Manager class decodes the JSON into an array of emoji object. The emoji object JSON file is stored in the bundle, and you can find the file in the resources folder along with the other assets. The view model is where we do all of the functions related to the content view, and in particular, it uses an array of emoji that simply filter the full set of emojis based on the selected group or category. Currently, all of the emojis are available for every category. What we want to do is to restrict that number of emojis in any one of the categories to just 50% of them until a subscription has been purchased. To do this, we're going to set up an enum that can be used as our model for the subscription as well. There will be two cases, basic and full. If the user pays for the subscription, we'll change the level to full to unlock and display all of the emojis. So first, within the models folder, create a new file and call it level. In there, create an enum of the same name, level, that has an associated type of string, because we'll need to check the raw value against a string for our purchase. It has two cases, basic and full. The basic case will be the default, and the full case will be the in-app subscription that we purchase. So we can also add a computed property called remove that will return a double. If we switch on self, we can return 0.5 or 50% to remove when we're in basic mode. If it's full, we'll return 0, meaning we'll remove 0% of the items, displaying them all. We can now then go to our view model and change it so that the array of emojis reflects our current level. Add a new published level property that will be the current level, and we'll set it to basic. We'll update the array of emojis returned from the emoji manager class based on the current level. So we can assign the full set to the variable called emojis. We can figure out the count and then remove 50% of them if the level is basic. And I can do that all in one line by retrieving the emojis by dropping the last count multiplied by the value from the enum's remove property. So either 0.5 or 0, i.e. remove 50% or none. Now I can't multiply an int by a double, so I'll convert count to a double. And then I'll need to transform the whole evaluation into an int. Before we start working on the code, and in Glassfy, we'll need to set up our app in AppStore Connect. Before you do that, however, make sure that your bundle identifier reflects your own domain and not mine. This will have to register with AppStore Connect, so build and run your project. Here I am logged into my AppStore Connect account with all of my apps currently available, along with others that I have in development. So I'm going to add one more. I'm going to name it Glassfy Purchase. And I'm going to set my primary language to English US. Now, depending on how you have set up your certificates, you may have to go to and register your new bundle ID by clicking on this link. And it may happen automatically. For this project, I registered the bundle, and now when I click on Choose, I can find it right at the top of the list. You can choose to enter anything you like for your own SKU. Click on Create, and this will add the app to your dashboard. Next, select the app, then go to In-App Purchases tab. Create an in-app purchase, and you can do this by clicking the plus button beside the in-app purchase to bring up the next screen. We're going to choose an auto-renewable subscription. For my reference name, I'm going to say Full Access Monthly. For the product ID, I'll use full, which is the same as the raw value that I used for my level enum. You'll be asked to create a subscription group. So I'm just going to say Full Access and Create. In the future, you could add more subscriptions if you like, but right now we're going to stick with just one. At the next screen, for the subscription duration, choose 1 month, and then make sure you save. add a subscription price of, I'm going to add $1.99 Canadian. And I'll leave the price as is for all of the other currencies and all the other countries. And again, I'll save. I'm going to return to the main in-app purchase screen and open the new product that I just created. For localizations, I'm just going to right now create US English. And for the display name, I'll choose Full Access. For the description, I'll just say, unlock the full set of emojis. Now the remainder of the information here has to be added prior to submission, but this is good enough for us to test. So let's return to the main in-app purchase section once more, and I'm going to keep this window open now, as we'll need to return to it in just a minute during our Glassfy setup. So now it's time to set up things on Glassfy, our middleware between our app and AppStore Connect. At the Glassfy site, you can sign up for free. And I've created my account using my GitHub account, so I can just click on this button. Now, as I've not yet created any apps on Glassfy for this account, the first thing it does is ask me to complete my account by adding more information about myself, and at the same time create my first app. So I'll enter my name and my company name. And then for the app name, I'm going to use the same name that I used for my app, Glassfy Purchase. I like to have things consistent throughout everything. That way it's easier for me to locate. And I can create the account. Now there are 3 pieces of information that are critical and required so that Glassfy can manage purchases on your behalf of the App Store for your app. The app key we'll need shortly in our app, so I suggest that you copy it right now and then paste it somewhere in as a comment on one of your files in your app. So I'm just going to paste it right into the enum that I just created. I'll be getting rid of that shortly, but I need it here for a reference. And then while I'm at it, I'm going to need my bundle ID, because that was one of the other fields that I need. So back in the Glassfy site, I'll paste that bundle ID into the app bundle ID field. So that's 2 of the 3 fields. The third one is the app shared secret. And this comes from our AppStore Connect account. So let's return there to that section that we left open, and then click on the button that's going to allow me to create an app-specific shared secret. Copy that to your clipboard and return to the Glassfy dashboard. And then paste it into the app shared secret field and save. Well, now it's time within Glassfy to set up our products. And we only have one, and that's going to be for that subscription that is the full subscription. And that's called a SKU. So create your first SKU and use the name as our enum's raw value, full, which is the same as what we used in AppStore Connect. It's a 1-to-1 match, just easier to manage if you do that. Next up, we'll need permissions. And we'll create permissions for each one of our SKUs. And as we only have one, there's only one permission. For the identifier, again, for simplicity's sake, we'll use the same value, full. For the description, I'll enter the same thing that I used in AppStore Connect, which was unlock the full set of emojis. And then finally, I'll assign the full SKU to the full permission. Well, now it's time to do some coding and some testing. If we return to the Glassfy website and then go to the documentation page, in the installation section for iOS, we see that we have a couple of options to install the SDK. I can either use CocoaPods or Swift Package Manager. Since Swift Package Manager is a first-party solution, I'm going to choose it. So I'm going to copy this URL here, and it says to set the version up to the next major one when I'm installing it in my app. So let's do that. So within Xcode, to install the SDK with Swift Package Manager, I can choose File, Add Packages, and then just paste in that URL into the search field. I'm going to do as it said by changing the dependency rule to next major version and add the package, and then add the package again to add that Glassfy package dependency to my project. Now I want a file that's going to manage all of the purchase information. Inside the Managers group, create a new file and call it Purchase Manager. Now because I'm going to be using the Glassfy SDK, import Glassfy. And then create a new class called Purchase Manager. And then I'm going to make this a singleton. So I'm going to create a static shared property that's equal to Purchase Manager. And then I'll use a private init. Now Glassfy has to be initialized when the app launches. So I'll create a function called configure. And then in the body, you can call the Glassfy's initialize function that requires a string API key. Well, that key was the key that we pasted into our level file. So let's go and grab it from there, cut it out, and then I can paste it into my configure function. Now, in order to test to make sure that we have everything set up before we go ahead and code our paywall, I'm going to create another function that I'm going to call getProducts. And we can use this then to test that configuration right away. Now we want that function that returns our SKU. So let's choose the glassify.sku, and I see that I have two options. One that uses a completion handler, and one that's grayed out that's asynchronous. Now since we're using iOS 15, I want to use the new concurrency. So I'll choose the async version, and I see that it also throws and returns a Glassfy SKU. And this requires a SKU ID, but this is just the level.fulls raw value. Now remember that this is an async function, so we'll need to add that in our function, and we'll have to return an optional SKU in the case that something goes wrong with our API. And then we can return what we get back from this function using try await. Now we need to handle the case where it might fail, so we'll enclose this in a do catch block. If there is an error, we can print out the error's localized description, and we can just return nil. Now we need to make sure that we call that configure function to initialize Glassfy when our app launches. So within our app's entry point, that's the file marked with the app main, I can add an onAppear block to where our content view is presented. And within there, I can initialize the Purchase Manager shared configure function. If I open content view now, when our content view appears, I can add an asynchronous task to the parent view, which in my case is the ZStack, that will await the execution of the Purchase Manager's getProduct function. Now, if I get a valid SKU back, I can use ifLet. I can print out the SKU information to the console, and that will determine and show me whether or not I have a successful connection. So for example, I can use the SKU.product.localized description to print out. And there are a couple of other pieces that might be helpful. The localized title, and the product's price. Let's test this out now by running in the simulator. When the app launches, it will first configure Glassfy, and then when the content view appears, it makes a call to retrieve the SKU, and when it gets it, prints out that information to the console. Perfect, we're on our way. Now, the more astute of you may notice that the price here is $1.49 when I specified $1.99 Canadian. Well, that's because my simulator is set to US. So that's the US localized price. AppStore Connect handles that for me. When I test on a real device in the next video in this series, you'll see that I have it set as a Canadian and it'll show $1.99. So that's enough for today. Make sure that you tune in for the next video in this series where we'll implement the paywall and then test out our purchases with a sandbox account on a real device. Thanks for watching.